Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Prof Patel. We are coming to you from our studios here in Rivonia, Santon on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. I'll be in your company for the next 1 hour. Now, of course, yesterday at the International Court of Justice had dismissed the case brought by Sudan accusing the United Arab Emirates of breaching the UN Genocide Convention by arming and funding the rebel paramilitary rapid support forces in the current deadly civil war. The ICJ said that it, quote unquote, manifestly lacked the authority to continue the proceedings and throughout the case. Joining me now to discuss this, I'd like to welcome Professor Amira Osman, who is the South African Research Chair in Spatial Transformation at the Tshwane University of Technology, and she's also a Sudanese citizen. Professor, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran so much for joining us.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmah. Thank you so much for having me and for shedding light on the Sudanese situation.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I think, we've been chatting offline, Professor, and I think this really is a dark day for many Sudanese who actually wanted some sort of clarity, isn't it, with regards to what is happening, given the devastation that the RSF is now causing in many parts of Sudan, especially in Khartoum. Just your initial reaction to the ICJ's decision yesterday.
Faraz, will you allow me to give a little bit of background, which
Sure,
will
sure.
connect the significance of today with the significance of yesterday's ruling. So if I can just foreground it by saying,
I can give you 5 minutes. I can give you 5 minutes, Professor. Then you can speak on it. Sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
I think I would like to build up an argument. So I speak as an architect and an urbanist. I'm interested in cities, their development, transformation, and in some cases, like in the Sudan, in their destruction and possible rebuilding. I also speak as a concerned Sudanese citizen, worried daily about the well-being of family members trapped in a family. I speak as a South African citizen, wishing to convey a clear and unambiguous message to the South African community regarding the situation in Sudan. Today, the 6th of May, is a defining day, in my opinion, with regards to the Sudanese war. It is a major transition regarding the nature of the war. The buildup was gradual, but I think today is a pivotal day. After the destruction of the capital city Khartoum and the occupation of the capital by the RSF militia for 2 years, the government of the Sudan moved its headquarters to Port Sudan on the Red Sea. Many organizations, businesses, and displaced people have moved there, such as the United Nations staff. They've all moved there for the last 2 years. And also note that Port Sudan has the only, currently, or it was up until yesterday, the only functioning international airport in the country. Yesterday, Port Sudan, and for the first time during this war, has seen the targeted destruction by drone missiles. This morning, the missiles, and that's why today is so significant. This morning, the missiles targeted the airport again, as well as the harbor and a hotel in the city. Last night, many, and I've been in communications with some in the city, did not sleep, and many have started packing their bags in preparation to make the journey to the borders of the country. Please note, in many cases, this will be the 3rd, 4th, or maybe more displacement of these people. Why is this important regarding the ICJ ruling of yesterday? The ICJ yesterday dismissed the case that Sudan brought forward to the court regarding the United Arab Emirates supplying the RSF militia with weapons. The Sudanese government's argument was that these weapons have allowed for a genocide to take place in Western Sudan. I have to make a disclaimer here. I am not a legal expert. Don't who I am. But as far as I can see, the case was dismissed on a technicality. I have not found any report or news article saying that the case had no merit in terms of its actual content. You had a speaker before on Hilaal TV, and I hope people who are interested in having more information will go back and who actually gave an overview of the reports from reputable sources that spoke about the atrocities committed by the RSF, as well as the possible scenarios about how the weapons are reaching the RSF. It's easy for people to find these reports. What's important for me here is to give an analysis. For 2 years, the modus operandi of the RSF has been to infect, terrorize, and occupy vast territories of the Sudan, mostly with foot soldiers and small vehicles. In the last few days, the modus operandi has changed, and that's why today is a pivotal day with the destruction of the airport in Port Sudan. This indicates a direct correlation between the availability and supply of more advanced weapons to the RSF and the change in the modus operandi. The issue of weapons and where they are coming from and who is funding them and how they are delivered is key to understanding this new development in the conflict. Maybe I'll leave it.
Yeah. I think, Professor Osman, what's important, and I know you're not a legal mind, so we're not going to go deep into the legalities. So we're going to speak from a Sudanese community or the Sudanese nation, and I'm sure you speak for the millions out there that are currently displaced at the moment. When the ICJ say it manifestly lacked, especially when it came to Chapter 9 of the Geneva Convention, I then listened to some legal experts, and they did say that, and you mentioned, there's merit to it. There is merit to it because reports had indicated that there is this correlation of the RSF getting the weapons from a source that is linked to the United Arab Emirates. From the Sudanese legal team, and I haven't spoken to them or listened to them, this is just independent analysts, do you feel that they can go back with this case on an appeal basis and say, look, there's still merit to this case, we can bring it forward? Because when you look at it from a whole, the Sudanese people still want a sense of accountability to what has been happening from the RSF and the havoc that they've created, not only in Khartoum, but now, just earlier today, what had happened in Port Sudan with the continuous attacks that have been occurring there.
I've seen at least one report indicating that the Sudanese government can appeal the judgment. I feel very inadequate legally in making a judgment on the judgment. So I prefer not to do that. But as you have you yourself have indicated, there is nothing that I have seen since the judgment yesterday that says this was thrown out because it's not a valid case.
Yeah,
on a technicality.
Yes, and I think that's important. So, because even leading up to, on Friday last week, or was it Thursday last week, if I stand to be corrected, there was reports that this was going to be taken away on a technicality. When you read the ICJ, when you read, of course, Chapter 9 of the Geneva Convention, technicalities are there, but it's not a foregone conclusion. With that little hope that is there, Professor Osman, is there still a validity for the Sudanese government to really say, listen here, there's an atrocity happening, there's genocide happening, this needs to be retaken again? And by that, it will allow for this sense of accountability to occur, because when you look at what the RSF is doing now, this is bordering of really getting out of control.
I think one comment I want to make here is that for the Sudanese and definitely many others around the globe, there is no international justice. The agencies that are supposed to ensure justice, I believe, are complicit themselves in the injustice. For us Sudanese, the majority Sudanese are silent, literally silenced and stunned and mourning for 2 years for the loss of a country. The few that do speak are linked to one or other political grouping, which they sometimes do not declare, and they are themselves committing a grave injustice to people on the ground that they are supposed to represent. So I don't know what the Sudanese government's next move will be. I don't know what's going to happen to the Sudanese government now that the alternative capital city, which has Port Sudan has been targeted in this very deliberate and systematic way. But I have built up I believe, a strong argument as to why the issue of who's supplying the weapons that have now changed so dramatically the nature of this war in just a few days. Who's supplying the weapons? How are they getting there? And why are international agencies not able to stop that supply of weapons? If the supply of weapons ends to the RSF today, the war would end today. It's as simple as that. And so I don't know what the international court can do. I don't know what the Sudanese government can do. But where the problem is, it's very evident to us as Sudanese that the modus operandi has changed. This war has become more sophisticated with more sophisticated weapons. Someone is supplying these weapons. I do believe that the RSF is not fighting this war to govern. This may be a controversial statement to make, but I would like your listeners to consider it. I'll ask a few questions. Why destroy a country that you want to govern?
Sure.
Why terrorize a people that you want to govern? The RSF had undeniable control over large
Professor Osman, I want you to hold on to that thought. We have to go to a break, unfortunately. There's an important point that you've come up with, and that has to be spoken about after the break. After this, we will continue our conversation with Professor Amira Osman. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still in conversation with Professor Amira Osman, who is the South African Research Chair in Spatial Transformation at the Tshwane University of Technology. She's also a Sudanese citizen. Professor, please do make me laugh for cutting you off there. There's something valid that you brought with regards to the RSF. You said that they're not ready to govern. And I want you to continue on that, please.
I don't even think it's a question of being ready. I don't think the intention is to govern. But we will see. This is a very dynamic situation, and maybe the analysis tomorrow will be different. But so far, for 2 years, they have had undeniable control over large parts of the country. They had full control over those parts of the country. They had sufficient opportunity to show the Sudanese people and the world what a Sudan under their control would look like. They did not. They simply destroyed and terrorized. And I believe this is a war against the very existence of the Sudan and its people. It's the deliberate, systematic dismantling of a state. Who's benefiting and who's facilitating?
Professor Osman, at the end, and as a Sudanese citizen, you feel it more than probably anyone else, and I'm sure you can speak for the rest of the community, not just here in South Africa, but across the world where there is a diaspora. It's the largest humanitarian crisis that we are currently witnessing in this modern era, something we're not supposed to. We, of course, see what's happening in Gaza, we see what's happening in the DRC, but Sudan has really shown to be the largest of it all. And hunger, famine, disease, the list rages on. And it's the citizens at the end that are suffering. And when you look at videos that are coming where it's complete disregard for the citizens, that in itself speaks of a situation that, even though there's international law, it really isn't being applied to Sudan, because it's just a country where it is out of control, and on one side, but on the other, what can be done to really solve the situation? Because, as you've mentioned earlier, the arms are coming in, and there's no real tracing of where the arms are coming. And given what we witnessed yesterday at the ICJ, it really does lack a sense of merit when it comes to that.
As I said earlier, I don't believe there's international justice. If there was international justice, the reality is that for 2 years, the Sudanese people have been taking refuge, escaping terror of the RSF in army-controlled areas. And if the RSF supply of weapons does not dry out or get halted, where do people take refuge? It's of such incredible scale, and the world is just ignoring it.
Dr. Osman, I want to touch on the African Union because the United Nations can come up with Security Council resolutions or General Assembly resolutions. Of course, the former would be more effective to that case, given its role within the UN. I want to touch on the African Union. Obviously, over the weekend, South Africa had pulled out of the Eastern DRC, and I know it's a different country altogether. But what is your hope from what South Africa needs to do to play its role in this case? Because when you look at how South Africa has now, of course, conducted itself with the Ukraine-Russia war, many people are calling South Africa this honest broker when it comes to the way it deals with wars. South Africa, in many cases, has not been that very active or largely active in trying to find a solution or resolution to the current deadly civil war. So what's your assessment, Professor, on South Africa's role with regards to this, or potentially its lack thereof?
South Africa needs to understand what is happening on the ground and the reign of terror that the RSF, that they've subjected the Sudanese people, still do. And I would like to remember the people of Darfur and the atrocities that they're facing today. And that's what the RSF is doing. So there are, of course, complexities regarding the Sudanese army, without any doubt. But this is a humanitarian case. This is a case of saving lives and getting people out of the terror areas, or at least taking back control of those areas under RSF control to protect the people. Because it's very obvious that that's where people go. They go to the army-controlled areas for protection. So obviously, for me, at this critical stage in history, the Sudanese army needs to be supported to play that role of protecting civilians, and that's what the South African government should be doing. I do remember at some stage, and I'll just mention it briefly without getting into details, but President Ramaphosa at some point had met with General Himeti, who leads the RSF, and to the great dismay of many Sudanese as to why the president would meet General Himeti. So that's something that needs to be considered in terms of South Africa's role in supporting Sudan going forward. You made a connection, with the African Union and the Congo. Sudan. I'll make one very quick comment that Sudan and the Congo are very resource wealthy countries. I'll mention, I think the Sudanese gold is known. It was the areas that have the gold saw massive urbanization in the last few years, something that is really, it was a major difference in the form and structure and makeup of some urban centers in the Sudan. And that gold and products such as gum arabic, despite the war, are still making themselves their way out of Sudan to the companies that use them. And I would like your listeners to be aware of gum arabic, and that Sudan is the major producer of gum arabic. The same can be said of the Congo, that despite what is happening in the Congo, those pathways, those routes to getting the wealth out of the country and the products out of the country is still happening. So I think Africa as a whole really needs to take into consideration what's happening here. These struggles are many times interlinked.
Professor, I got one final question. As we speak today, it's quite clear that any ceasefire that could be reached between the RSF and the Sudanese army, it's as what they would say, a pie in the sky. It's very difficult to see that happening right now. what is the way forward then? Because is it a simple case of just cutting the arms to the RSF and we're going to see peace? But where does now, from an international community perspective, really put pressure on the RSF to stop these attacks? Or even though you get international community condemnation or some sort of action happening, the RSF has this one modus operandi, and that is to do what they're doing right now and do it unchecked.
Yes, if the world really wants to support the Sudan, they will stop the flow of weapons into the Sudan. And I don't think that is really difficult to stop. If there's the political will to do so. And as I said, I don't believe the RSF wants to govern. So I don't believe a peace deal means people sitting around the table, perhaps a power sharing agreement. I don't think they want to govern. So this is not a power sharing issue. The destruction of everything that makes up the Sudan, it's hardware, if I may call it that, in terms of buildings, infrastructure, libraries, museums, everything has been deliberately, systematically destroyed and is still being destroyed. And the destruction of what I may call the software, that is the people and communities. If I may mention, our neighborhood in Khartoum is currently a mere WhatsApp group. There is no one in that neighborhood. People had to evacuate, the houses have been raided, there's nothing there. Our neighborhood is a WhatsApp group. So the software, the very making of Sudanese communities is being dismantled. So that's what's happening. And will the world intervene? Will justice prevail? Will these weapons stop being supplied to the militia? I have no idea.
Professor, shukran so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmah. Thank you.
That's Professor Amira Osman, who is the South African Research Chair in Spatial Transformation at the Tshwane University of Technology and also a Sudanese citizen. Something very important that she had mentioned right there, the erasure of the Sudanese culture, a culture which is rich in history. And it's sad that this is happening right in front of our actual eyes. The same thing when it comes to Gaza, its tradition, its history being taken out by our very own eyes. Two genocides, two different parts of the world, but really interlinked to what is happening. After the break, I'm going to be speaking to Malaika Ngwenya. You heard her rousing speech on Hilaal TV during the protest for Palestine on Monday in Cape Town. We're going to be speaking to her after the break.